Who am I?
Richard Casimir, media veteran.
Why I got in radio is because I'm good with a knife.
Contributor in Perth, Australia.
Our friend Richard Casimir in the United States.
How are you guys enjoying the 19th century? Is that working out for you? How can you say, I'm not making fun of you as a race, I'm making fun of you as black performers?
I think as a country, Americans are as patriotic as the most rabid UK football hooligan.
Who am I?
Richard S. Casimir.
Balls Radio with Phil Dobbie.
Now, let's see what's happening in the United States. And, of course, Richard Casimir is our man over there. He lives there for some reason. Oh, he'll tell us why one day. What's that? You got a dog in the background there, Richard?
Yes, I do.
That wasn't you. I'm pleased about that.
But I do teach him how to talk, so he's mimicking me.
So if you go away one weekend, we'll just talk to your dog. That's fair enough, isn't it? Now, look,
he's much smarter than I am, that's for sure.
Well, look, I'm not sure we want to raise the intellect on this program. I think we've peaked already. Look, we love America. If only for your loopy Republican candidates, and it sounds like Will Brooke is one of them. He doesn't like Obamacare, and he has a gun. That sounds like a dangerous combination. Tell me more.
Well, all the requirements to be an Alabama congressional candidate. Yeah, this nut job, he's a Birmingham businessman and, surprise, a Republican. He released this campaign video that features this hapless nitwit firing several shots into a copy of the now law of the land, the Affordable Care Act, which is known as Obamacare. And just like the 50 failed attempts of the Republican-led Congress to overturn the ACA, his ballistic wad shooting did zero damage to the intended target. Now, what you might want to think about is that, why would this candidate who's running for office openly advocate repealing the law that has to date seen 6 million people signed up for private insurance policies that they didn't have before, or that it's less than what they paid before with more comprehensive coverage? And you've got another 3 or 4 million low-income families who've also now enrolled in the extended Medicaid program. Why would he want to take that away from his constituents? Because, of course, he's part of the GOP, the Teabag Party, and the Libertarians, who think that any government program that provides assistance to those that can't afford it is no good. And so he's saying that you should have a market-based solution. Market-based is a buzzword for big corporate donors who fund even these local candidates to spread the word that if you can't afford the bust-out retail health care, then you shouldn't get it.
Does it cost a lot of money? Is there a lot of government money that's going into it? Is that the reason why there's this opposition?
No, there is no government money going into it. And that's the misconception or the lies that the GOP is spreading, because what it does is it offers a clearinghouse of insurance companies to get into this system and get into the ACA and offer more comprehensive coverage. The government doesn't provide health care. They're not in the healthcare industry. They're not in the healthcare business. But what it does is it mandates that everybody be covered. And, of course, the insurance companies want to get on board on that. So, and one of the things that they were doing, Phil, recently is that people were complaining that they were getting letters from their insurance companies saying, we're dropping you from this policy. The GOP ended right there and said all these people are going to be without insurance. The truth was the insurance companies were dropping these bogus, almost junk fund type insurance policies where you paid $50 and it covered absolutely nothing. So now these new insurance policies come out, and most of them are less than $300 a month, more comprehensive coverage. So what the insurance companies were saying were, in the letters to these people, were saying, we're dropping you from this policy, but we're giving you a more comprehensive policy at less price.
So the only reason they can object to it must be because less Democratic voters, less people voting for the Democrats, are dying. Because now they've got a more comprehensive health cover, or they've got some form of health cover.
You have hit the nail on the head, because the GOP
I was joking, but you reckon that's the real reason?
This is, and I kid you not, I'm not being sardonically sarcastic about this, but this is the absolute modus operandi of the GOP, is that you win elections by fewer votes. You win elections by more votes. Because if you have fewer people voting, then you win the elections. If I take something away from somebody, you're going to be pissed off at me and not vote for me. So if I take something away from you and it adversely affects your health, your ability to vote, then you're not going to vote. So that's the way this thing goes. Now, getting back to Brooks' video, think of another country on the planet where anybody would have the right to distribute a video, let alone have media coverage of himself shooting a metaphorically symbolic effigy of the president and then saying, now I'm quoting Brooke, "It looks like we'll have to resort to more extreme measures to get rid of Obamacare," which is dog whistle politics for an assassination against the president. Now, it wasn't that long ago that would have been considered an act of treason and a direct threat on the life of a sitting leader. But today, it's First Amendment.
First par for the course. It's just shocker, isn't it? Perhaps not surprising then that Barack Obama is overseas. He's probably decided it's safer over there. So he obviously gets a bit of a round-the-world ticket to save on his overseas trips, because he seems to throw in quite a few things together. So on the same trip, Pope Francis and King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia. So, interesting couple of meetings. Did anything come out of them?
Well, while he was in Europe, and he met with leaders in The Hague and in Brussels, and he also opened up a face-to-face can of whoop-ass on Russian President Vladimir Putin for playing capture the flag with Crimea. He stopped at the Vatican for his first meeting with the pontiff, who, by the way, still has that fresh Pope smell.
Just like a new car. Yeah,
it is. By all accounts, the hour-long meeting was very successful. Everybody's talking about it, although the press wasn't allowed in and nobody really knows what they were talking about. Now, what really pissed off the right on this side of the pond is that Barack Obama called the Pope, they say that he was a great admirer of Pope Francis, and the consternation of the American right are still insisting that Obama is either a Muslim, an atheist, a Jew, or Satan incarnate. So to have the two of them over there rubbing shoulders was much of their consternation, and didn't get a lot of press coverage over here, at least on Fox. Now, I would say, suffice it to say, they didn't talk about contraceptives. They did talk about the growing worldwide economic disparity. Both of them have a hand in that, and both of them are men of peace. So there was some good that came out of that. And I'm sure they talked about music, because the president is from Chicago, which is America of American blues and jazz. And the Pope, after all, he took his name from St. Francis of Sinatra, so I'm sure they had a lot to talk about.
No, maybe they just got out some old Sinatra CDs and just played those for an hour. I was wondering whether they actually do talk about anything at all, or whether they just, he brings a video in and they just watch a rerun of Becker or something. They just give me some of your American TV, perhaps.
I'm sure they laughed, they snacked, and they promised to meet up again at the White House for pizza and Chianti.
Exactly, that's how it works. What about King Abdullah, who's been a bit of a fan of Barack Obama, because when he was Barack Obama was elected the first time around, he said he was glad to see him get in, but I guess after George W. anything was an improvement, wasn't it? But
actually, quite the contrary, because King Abdullah is a lifelong family friend of the Bushes, and they've been trading oil and money and everything else for many, many generations.
Well, there we are. But yes, and not got a great track record either in terms of human rights. So it's an interesting one, isn't it? So how do you, and obviously a very different view. Well, not a different view in terms of what should be done in Syria, but certainly King Abdullah is pushing much harder and would like to see more support for the rebels in Syria. But obviously the president is trying to tread a difficult line here and not to be seen influencing it too much. So that would have been an interesting meeting, I think.
Well, that was the general synopsis of the meeting, was the two of them were trying to hash out some strained relations between the two countries in the past couple of months. And as you say, it's because King Abdullah wants more U.S. involvement, either by the way of more military assistance or boots on the ground to intervene in this Syria conflict. But, President Obama is not going to do it. He's seen what happened in the previous administration with George Bush of going into Iraq and costing us nearly 4,500 U.S. soldiers killed, another 100,000 wounded, and over 1.5 million of Iraqi casualties. So we're not about to go into there in any stretch of the imagination. So Obama told King Abdullah that we're committed to peace, but pretty much left it at that. The interesting thing is that King Abdullah doesn't have any cards in his hands to threaten us with, because we're importing a decreasing amount of oil from Saudi Arabia. We're about 18% right now, and he really has no bargaining chips. And we pulled our U.S. military base out of there in 2003. So he has really nothing to say. So he's just going to, I think what he's doing is he's saving face. His relevance is pretty much diminished. Also was the mutual backing by the U.S. and Saudi Arabia of the ouster of Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi. But what's happened is the new government in Egypt has been handing out death sentences like falafels at a footy match. So they're a little concerned about that. They also did not talk about Saudi Arabia's oppression of women and other groups.
Well, yeah, I mean they really do enforce Sharia law in its full sense, don't they, over there? So, you cut your arm off for stealing, much worse for infidelity, I should imagine, and death sentence even for things like public drunkenness and stuff like that, supposedly. So it really is a very harsh regime. It would be very difficult to have a meeting with him without mentioning that perhaps some of this is just contradictory to human rights, but perhaps he glossed over that one.
You pick your battles.
Yeah, I guess you do. Now, this is an important story now. We've been waiting for this one. Europe's had a butter mountain, of course, all that ridiculous situation where they had all that wasted food that was stored up in Europe basically to try and control prices. It was one of the odd things about the common agricultural policy. So we had the butter mountain and the milk lake, but we never had in Europe a peanut butter mountain. But you do over there in America. Always ready to go one better, aren't you?
The big box giant Costco wholesale decided it was in theirs and the public's best interest to dump 950,000 jars, which is about 25 tons of peanut butter, in a landfill, rather than take possession of it from a bankrupt supplier. And
950,000
jars, yes.
Wow.
And so the reason is, now this may sound like a waste, but what it is that
Yes.
Costco is protecting itself, because the supplier that went bankrupt a couple of years ago had faced 41 counts of salmonella poisoning in several of its products. So Costco was not willing to take that risk on itself litigiously or on its potential customers in buying the stuff. So they decided it would be in the best interest to destroy it all. Now, in the world of retail, this is actually standard policy to destroy perfectly good unused products and then write them off as tax losses rather than risk anybody cutting themselves on something, or, the button's too tight and whatever. So they get a tax write-off on it, and then they throw it away. And that's
Wow.
just how it goes. Now, there is on the upside, there's a growing movement over here by a variety of social service agencies and by some of the top-notch grocers and other food service outlets, including restaurants, to use unused food and donate it all to area food banks. You would be amazed at how many tons, hundreds of tons a day is absolutely thrown away of perfectly good food from supermarkets and restaurants. Food that was never touched on a table, a carrot or any sort of vegetable produce that has a bruise on it that they can no longer sell because it's no longer aesthetically pleasing. That has heretofore been thrown away. Now these groups are coming around saying, give it to us. We'll process it. We'll take it off your hands and we'll feed the hungry. So that is a growing movement over here, and it's really very refreshing to see.
So the hungry are going to be having a lot of peanut butter sandwiches by the sounds of it in that case. The hungry are going to suddenly become obese from eating the wrong sort of food. That's the only problem, isn't it? But it does seem very sad, doesn't it, that we're having food thrown away in the first world, and yet the third world is struggling so much. I mean, there has to be an answer to that. We've got to find, I know transport is the big issue and logistics, but there has to be an answer, surely.
Sure, yeah, it's just getting together. And as I say, over here, particularly in the greater Boston area, we're seeing a growing number of groups that are just going to these restaurants, especially the upscale restaurants, and saying, look, we can see what you're throwing away. We're looking at it in your dumpsters. We'll sign a waiver. We'll do anything. Just give us the food. And a lot of these people are stepping up to the plate, and they're doing it, and they're taking the food to local food pantries and shelters and homeless shelters and places like that and feeding people good, healthy, nutritious food. Now, we're not talking about potato chips and stuff. We're talking about real meat, potatoes, good protein, good vegetables. So again, it's just a wonderful thing that's happening.
Now, finally, Richard Kasmer, a new course offering a lens into cultural conflict and core issues of intersectionality theory. This sounds like a very noble. I wouldn't have a clue what it's all about, but it sounds deeply intriguing and very intellectual. Tell me more.
Oh, jeez. you could pick it. Well, Skidmore College, which is up in beautiful upstate New York and Schenectady, it's a great part of New England. They've added a course for the summer, and it's called The Sociology of Miley Cyrus, Race, Class, Gender, and Media. It's not part of the college's regular curriculum. It is a summer course only. Now, the Skidmore assistant professor, Carolyn Chernoff, says she's using the twerky pop star as a lens into cultural conflict, exploring race, class, gender, and the core issues of intersectionality theory. What does that mean?
I think you got it right the first time, probably.
Intersectionality is the study of intersections between different disenfranchised groups or groups of minorities. Meaning it's a summer course at colleges. Any summer course at a college is a moneymaker. They fill a student credit requirement and it generates revenue for the university. She's on the other side. The professor is saying that she's serious about this, that this is sociology, and why she's doing it is because of Cyrus's popularity and her rise to stardom, and some would say her fall. It's a discussion of appropriation, queerness, gender, stratification, and hyper-commodification of childhood. And what that means is that someone like Miley Cyrus, who got her start with her dad and the Disney Channel and people like Britney Spears and those types, is what has become of them in this hyper commodification, and they've lost their childhood altogether. But that's the business. That's the way it is.
You got to stop now. It sounds like you're defending it. It's funny.
I think it's what she's doing is she's just putting lipstick on a pig. Basically, she's got a good course going on there, and she's thrown Miley Cyrus into the mix to make it attractive. This is nothing new. This has been going on in universities over here for many, many years, even in the regular curriculum, offering classes on classical composers, the jazz icons, and pop culture. Contrary to the extremely brilliant Huey Lewis, it ain't hip to be square.
No. And will you, at the end of this course, be taught how to twerk effectively? That is what everyone wants to know.
I hope not.
I don't know. Can you twerk? Have you twerked? Did it do your back in?
At my age and my back, no. Don't even go there.
I don't even want to think about it. Richard Kasmer, good to talk. See you next week.
All right, brother. Take care.
I came in like a wrecking ball. Balls Radio with Phil Dobbie.